Hi, how's everyone doing today? I'm Mr. Willie, and I hope you get excited for this month's Kokusaika craft. We're going to be making rock candy with Dr. Stone. You should have these supplies in your bag, and I'm going to walk you through the process of how you'll turn water and sugar and a few simple things that we have in that bag into candy. You'll be learning science, just like in the popular anime and manga, Dr. Stone.
All right, so the library has provided most of your materials, including the wooden skewer, the wooden pins that will hold your wooden skewer in the glass, a sheet of paper that has your directions for this project, as well as a quick mini project afterwards, and one tumbler glass. You will be expected to provide a few things from home. These things include one packet of sugar. You might not need the entire packet. You might be able to just use whatever's at your house. One pan to boil water in. A few measuring cups would be handy, although not super necessary, but those will help you get the measurements right. And some plastic wrap or aluminum foil will also assist with this project, but isn't really necessary. If you can do without, that's fine. Alright, so you're going to take some of your sugar, and you're going to take a paper towel, and what you're going to do is you're going to pour out a little bit of the sugar onto the paper towel, and wet your wooden skewer. Once you've done this, you will roll the wooden skewer in the sugar crystals that you've poured on the paper towel, and these will be what's called your seed crystals. The seed crystals are what the sugar crystals to make your rock candy will form on. Now you're going to want to leave this to dry for a little while. You don't just want to drop this directly into your sugar crystals, so your next step after you've built up a decent amount of sugar crystals on there is to set this aside to dry. Next up, you're going to want to start boiling your water. You'll want to get it to a good rolling boil if you can. 120 degrees is ideal if you have a thermometer, but if not, you'll just want to make sure you see lots of little bubbles coming up from the bottom of the pan. If you don't get it to a rolling boil, that'll mess up the chemistry, and it'll be less likely to work exactly how we want. So we're just letting that get to a little nice boil for a little while. Once again, the reason why this is important is because you're going to be watching chemistry at work. I'm going to pour this sugar in. You're going to want to do this about 1 cup at a time. You don't want to pour all the sugar in at once. You want to pour the sugar in, and then you want to start to stir it until it's completely dissolved into the water. Now the goal is to try and make a sugary syrup that'll form these sugar crystals how we want. 1 cup at a time will give you a nice thick syrup, and you'll know you're starting to get just the right amount whenever you can see a little bit of sugar that won't mix in. But until then, just stir 1 cup at a time. Stir, stir, stir. And here's another cup. Now we put 4 to 6 cups on the instructions, so you would have about 2 to 3 times as much water as you have, 2 to 3 times as much sugar as you have water. But you might end up wanting to add a little bit more than this. You'll have to troubleshoot and see how much works for you. It took me a few tries before I got my sugar crystals to grow. More sugar usually helps more than less sugar, though. And we're still stirring. And you'll start to see it change colors after a while. It'll look less like clear water and more of a syrupy color. Now the next step is to go ahead and pour this mixture that you've made into the glass. It's going to be very hot when you pour it. You do want to pour it while it's still hot. In fact, if you have the time, one thing that helps the sugar crystals grow is if you can actually heat up the outside of the glass before you pour your boiling solution in there, because you want the outside of the glass nice and hot. Now you want it hot when you pour it, but you want to let it cool down before the next step. If you put the next step in before you let it cool down, then the seed crystals will actually dissolve, and then you won't be able to grow anything. But you take your seed crystals after the glass is cooled down, and you put the wooden clothespins so that you can balance them on the tumbler glass. It might take you a few tries, that's okay. Just try to make sure the stick doesn't touch the side of the glass or the bottom of the glass. That's the most important part. Now you should know in a few hours if this works, because you'll start to see the sugar crystals form, and you'll start to see them especially along the top of the glass. Speaking of the top of the glass, there is one more step you want to do today. You're going to want to use that plastic wrap or aluminum foil that we talked about earlier. You'll want to poke a little bitty hole in the top of that plastic wrap that you can use to stick around your wooden skewer. And this is to prevent bugs or flies from getting into your solution. The bugs or flies love sugar water. We don't want them to get in there. That'll ruin your candy if you have a bunch of bugs in it. I personally like bug-free candy. So you'll want to make sure you put that plastic wrap on there. And that should be the last step for today. The next step will actually be to wait about 3 days to a week for the sugar crystals to form. You'll want to leave it in a cool, dry area if you can. The less humidity, the better, and you also don't want it in the sun because that'll change the temperature and that'll mess up your sugar crystal formation.
Well, that's how you make the rock candy. In about 3 days to a week, you're going to notice that the rock candy is complete inside, and you'll break the top and take your rock candy out, and then you can eat it. Hopefully that works. It might take a few tries. I know it took me a few tries, but I promise it does work. If you don't get it to work, or if you just want something else that's fun to do after you're done, we also included on the back of your instructions how to make the world record-breaking paper airplane. This diagram comes directly from the Dr. Stone manga, so make sure you read it from right to left, and you can make a paper airplane that'll break world records.